Hello, Warfighters. War is hell. I wanted to make this a special episode because not too long ago, Bohemia Interactive released their timeline for Arma 3, which kind of got me thinking about Arma 4. And I wanted to go ahead and just use this opportunity to talk about the top 10 things that I would want to see in Arma 4. Now, don't get me wrong. Arma 3 is hands down one of my all-time favorite games. I mean, I hope you guys would figure that out with how much that I play it. And Bohemia Interactive really does a great job at keeping the game up to date, improving it. Even though that this game is like 3 years old, it still plays pretty well. The modding community has also done a tremendous job as well, helping to improve the game by just making sure that you have a unique experience tailored to what you want to play and how you want to play it. I mean, it's really what makes the series that I do about the Falkland Islands and ones that I'm going to do in the future really be a thing. For this wish list, I really do want to make sure that everybody knows I am not knocking Arma 3. For my job, I do a lot with coming up with new ideas, how to improve things, and to make things better than they are now. Which means I understand that there are a lot of good things about a lot of the stuff that I do at work, but there's areas that you can improve. I mean, that's just one of the best things you could think about anything that you do is how can I make it better? And so that's really the whole point of this. So let's go ahead and get started with the top 10 things I would love to see in Arma 4. Coming in at number 10, more sponsored modding competitions. Now, I know this is not a component of the game, but I really do think this is an opportunity for Bohemia Interactive to really improve things for Arma 4. If you guys can remember the Make Arma Not War competition, it came out in 2015, and it was just an amazing competition that Bohemia Interactive put together and gave out cash prizes to winners in a number of different areas in modding the game. So, like, there was a category for best single-player game mode, best multiplayer game mode, add-on, and just total modification of the game. And they gave out 500,000 euros, which is a lot of money spread out over the winners in those different areas. Now, what was cool, though, is that this competition, Make Arma Not War, it was featured in a number of publications just all over the internet. Lots of different articles were written on it, and a lot of people were wanting to see who won in these particular categories. Now, what's cool about that is it also introduced a whole bunch of new players to Arma. That publicity did a lot of good, and it also brought some modders to the game as well. It basically let everybody know that Arma 3 is very mod-friendly, and again, you can tailor it to how you want to play it. What it also did, and this is kind of how it helped me the most, is it allowed me and the rest of the existing player base to find some of the best mods that there are for the game. Having more competitions like this can really drive the modding community, in my opinion, to keep making great mods, as there'd be an incentive, a monetary incentive, to make the best mod that you can. Makes the game even better in the long run. Now for number 9, making the DLC meaningful. When Arma 3 came out with some of their early DLC, there was a lot of debate about whether that DLC was worth how much they were asking for it. Now, go-karts came out in 2014, and I'm just going to set this out here. I'm not a fan at all of playing for DLC, but I'm a lot more willing to pay for something where there's more content. So I guess before I get into this, I loved what Apex did. So Apex gave us a new map, a whole new faction, as well as some new weapons, vehicles, and my favorite part, the cooperative campaign. That's the type of stuff I'm more inclined to be able to pay for. But not like carts, which I understand came out because of an April Fool's joke, but it really didn't give out that much. And then there were some other ones too, like Marksman DLC only gave us just some weapons and the use of bipods, which in my opinion just should have been in the game from the get-go. So with DLC being very, very important to the monetization of Arma and just the success of Bohemia Interactive in the future, I understand it, but I do think that the long-term success of Arma, Bohemia Interactive, and everything related to it is going to be based on how this DLC is released, what's in it, and the overall retention of the player base will be increased with good DLC. Now for number 8, more animations and making it easier to use those animations. So those of you who are a part of my channel know that I am a mission maker, and I love to tell stories, which means I value animations greatly. The animations that you use in a mission really do set the tone for how the mission is going to go, the story you're trying to tell, and really allows both the players, the viewers, whatever you're trying to do, connect more with what's going on an emotional level. And there's a number of animations that can be used in the game, but only a few of them can be used in combat or to transition into combat. So that type of stuff is like sitting, standing, kneeling, and there's a animation called watch. Now I think more animations need to be in there that can transform into combat. So this is what I mean. There is one animation in the game, and you guys have probably already seen it because it's in the campaign at the very beginning, and a lot of people who are mission makers will use this. But it's basically some guy is kneeling and working on a vehicle. Now this is not an animation that transfers into combat. So there have been missions, and I'm actually going to show one sometime in the near future that I've ended up playing, where some guy is working on the car, I'm shooting all around him, and he's still working on the car because the animation doesn't transfer into combat. That type of stuff needs to be fixed. Chances are, if you're working on a car, bullets are whizzing around your head, you're going to reach for your gun or something like that. That's something that I think really needs to be improved. But also there needs to be just some animations that are just included that happen randomly that just adds more to the feel of the game. So what I mean by that is, say you're walking just a standard wedge formation, okay? If you're just walking, I think it would be cool if you have an animation that just randomly appears where one of the guys in the squad turns around, walks backwards for a little bit, and just makes sure nothing's going on behind you. Those little things I know may not seem like much, but it can really add to the environment of the game. Now, as I mentioned, using animations for mission makers should be a lot easier to use. Now, I don't want to do this that much in this video where I talk about having mods implemented into the game, but Eden Enhanced is one of those mods that I think really does a phenomenal job at making the use of animations very easy. That type of interface, I think, really needs to be integrated into the game, just so that way the novice mission maker can easily use animations and know what's available to them. Coming in at number 7, improved infantry movement. Now, movement is critical to any form of combat. Like, how you get from point A to point B can be a very, very strategic decision. And I really do think Arma can improve in the area of infantry movement and be more realistic. For example, there are times where it's important to bring your formation closer together, like if you do not want to be seen as easily or you're trying to conceal your position. Also, there's times where you want to spread out, like if you're taking indirect fire from the enemy. That's something that is not included in this game, but has really meant or been the difference between a squad being wiped out and a successful mission. Now, I do think, though, that just formations as a whole could be adjusted too. Like, if there's a way to be able to set them at a squad, team, and platoon level, that might enhance how the game is played. So, like, if I have me and, let's say, 15 AI soldiers on my side that I'm controlling, if I say, squad, go wedge, everybody is going to get in one wedge of 16 people. That's not too realistic. What would be nice is if you had a team, a squad of 8 people who are in a wedge. Behind them, 20-30 meters, you have another squad that is in a wedge formation. It adds realism, it helps you be more secure when you're traveling, and it just makes the game better if you can do more to control how you guys move. Now finally, I understand bounding is important. It's a huge part of warfare today. So moving from one point to another while part of your unit is still engaging the enemy, and then you switch, that's basically bounding in the most basic summary ever. But there are times where I just need me and my team to run to a location without returning fire. Prime example of this is like in an urban warfare setting. Okay, let's say a static MG just pops up and starts firing at me and my team. Now, I can run behind a building, no problem, but most of the time my team is going to bound and they're just going to get mowed over as they're laying down or kneeling trying to engage the enemy. I want to be able to make that decision to just, hey, get behind cover as quickly as you can, ignore the enemy. But I mean, you should also be able to have the option, I guess, to run while returning fire too, just to try and provide some cover and maybe get a lucky shot. But anyway, the important thing is I think this is an area where Arma can improve by looking at how infantry moves around the map. Now for number 6, easier terrain building. Just like we talked about with animations being a key component to how you tell a story, the setting, of course, is also going to be a key component of that. And I think this is really evidenced by how many different milsims and RPs include a different map than what comes default in Arma 3. Again, I don't want to sound like I'm knocking Bohemia Interactive, but I just think it illustrates how important the setting is and the maps are to the Arma community. And I think making building a map easier should be a key component of Arma 4. And there's a number of ways that you can do this. So one I can think of is you just have a randomly generated map that you can create. Imagine like you have different sliders and drop-down menus. So like you've got a drop-down menu that lets you choose the biome. Like, do you want it to be generally a desert type map, jungle map, snowy map, a plain? Like, how do you want, the core component of this to be? And then you have sliders that let you choose like diversity and elevation. How many hills and stuff do you want to have? How tall do you want those hills to be? How much trees or foliage do you want to have? Even the number of buildings and structures. You could choose water sources. Like, do you want this to be an island? Do you want there to be a river or a lake or just something there? Because really, again, this is not a knock. I think it is cool that Bohemia Interactive does integrate real islands and real areas on the earth into their games. That's cool. But in a lot of the times when I'm trying to tell a story, and the greatest example of this that I can think of is the Falkland Islands. I know the Falkland Islands have no trees whatsoever. It is the most bare landscape you're going to find. There's no map that I have been able to find that accurately illustrates the Falkland Islands. Now, I know that when you guys are watching this, you don't care that it's necessarily exactly the Falkland Islands. But if I can get a better feeling on what that area is like, that would be good. And that's going to, of course, go to other different series that I'm going to do as well. In addition to the terrain, I think it's easier to not only make the terrain better, but I think you should also be able to integrate more man-made aspects into the terrain. So what I mean by that is being able to add trenches that are actually like subterranean, making caves, foxholes, and craters from artillery shells, tunnels too. That type of stuff, that man-made alterations to terrain should be included in the next version of Arma as well. Now for number 5, Immersion. So the way I'm going to explain this here, a lot of people when they think of immersion is like better visuals and better audio. And I'm not going to lie, that is a key component of what I'm going to talk about here. But there is a little bit more to this. I do think that the visuals and audio are a issue with Arma 3. Because when you look at mods like Blast Core and JSRS, those are essential to a lot of Arma players, which shows that there could be some improvement. Now, I have very much appreciated, and I want to make sure that I recognize that Bohemia Interactive has made some tremendous strides in these areas. However, I do feel that they could go further than where they're at right now. I'm just going to have to wait and see what the results are of all their tinkering before I can say it's good enough. But I want to make sure that this is something that's stressed. Because, if you're destroying a tank or you detonate a satchel charge, in my opinion, that means you're doing something right. Explosions are cool, and it can really be rewarding. Better use of lighting, particles, other parts of the visuals that needs to be improved for Arma 4. Also, this is the part where I was talking about immersion's a little bit different and is more than just visual and audio, but I think more needs to be done to, lack of a better term, the people in the game or the characters. I think we do need to see a larger diversity of characters that can be created, including weight, height, gender. Seeing a woman or children in the game as a warfighter can really affect how I feel about a story or a particular location. There's one mission that I ended up playing with a whole bunch of civilians, but it was a whole bunch of middle-aged dudes that looked exactly the same, except they were wearing different shirts and shorts. I think this needs to be addressed, and I think it'd be kind of cool to have a woman warfighter in the game too, just for more reasons than I can explain in this video. But I do think that needs to be in there to get more of a feel that you are in like a village or a city by just seeing a diverse group of people. But I thought I was going to put this in a different location, but I'm going to go ahead and put it here. I do think native VR support needs to be part of Arma 4. I don't have VR myself. I've got a computer that supports it, but I just don't have the headset or anything. But I think it'd be really cool, like the stuff that I have seen for even people who played Arma 3, like in the opening part of the campaign, when you're carry and you're sitting on the helicopter looking down, that just seems like that would be really cool to see in VR, and hopefully with Arma 4, that's a big part of it as well. Now for number 4, better representation of military branches. I get it that Arma is supposed to be primarily infantry based, or what happens on the ground, but there is a lot of aspects of different military branches that are going to affect what happens on the ground. You know what? One instance I can think of in particular, really comes from the SEAL Team 6 operation that killed Osama bin Laden. Like, that just got so many people excited about Navy SEALs and introduced a lot of people to what the Navy SEALs do. I think it would be cool to actually have like an attack or nuclear submarine that is completely modeled inside and out that you can launch a boat from. It'll surface, sink as needed, but being able to go into an area via sub, that would be cool. I've been absolutely surprised too, though, with Arma, just how much emphasis they put on islands, but really don't do that much with amphibious warfare. Like, yes, I know that a lot of the vehicles, you can launch in water, but there is no amphibious assault ship. That type of stuff I think would be great to add to the game, and in conjunction with that, I just feel like the Navy as a whole needs a larger presence in this game, from ships that can support ground troops by bombarding the shore with their gun, aircraft carriers to be able to take off from, even if you're just going with a helicopter, not necessarily an aircraft. But I don't know, like, for me, I think a really cool Arma mission would be that there is a naval vessel that I have to go capture. I don't know about you, but that seems cool to me. And then I also think that revamping air power in the game is necessary too. It's cool that close air support was a great aspect of Arma 3, but air superiority, multi-role aircraft, I think should be an expanded part of Arma 4. Aircraft as a whole and what happens in the air really has a huge impact on what happens on the ground. And so just having stuff ready to be able to better support that and maybe have a different way for air combat to take place, it's a little bit more realistic, for me, would be a great add. And then finally, strategic warfare, in the case of cruise missiles and other strikes, that should be a part of Arma 4. Laser designating a target for a surface-to-surface missile, or just seeing a cruise missile strike in a particular location, that can have a lot of impact on the diversity of missions that we could see and create. I just think that'd be a good part of the game to make sure we capture as many different branches of the military as possible. Now for number 3, a modern timeline. So all of the milsims that I have been a part of, and I can imagine a large majority of milsims that exist out there right now for Arma, really modify the game to represent modern day warfare, even if that means that they're taking content from previous versions of Arma. I don't think this is necessarily a complete rejection of the 2035 timeline that's presented in Arma 3, but I do think that this really shows that the interest is in what's occurring right now on the battlefields. And I can understand why 2035 was probably chosen for the timeline. You can basically create whatever you want, and you're not going to piss anybody off. CSAT, I get a lot it's going to take place between now and 2035 that could really change the geopolitical landscape. But I'm wondering if CSAT was created so Bohemia Interactive wouldn't piss anybody off. And it makes sense. It's a struggle for a lot of companies that are trying to entertain people, because if you're seen as the bad guy, that country is probably not going to want to play the game, and it's going to decrease sales. I think Red Dawn was a great example of this. The movie didn't want to paint China as the bad guy because they wanted sales from China. So they unrealistically made North Korea invade the United States. I know you don't want to lose sales there. Same thing with Russia. But Iran already banned the game anyway because of CSAT being represented as the bad guys. Maybe Iran could be the bad guy in Arma 4 just altogether. But I do think going back to keeping it modern, it would not only appeal to current players, but potential players as well. Word of mouth is a great way to be able to talk about and share the game. Obviously, word of mouth is a great way to talk about the game, but what I mean by that is I talk a lot about Arma at work. And for the people who are interested in the military, it's so easy for me to be able to tell them, like, okay, so my platoon loaded into the Chinook and, continue on with my story because people know what a Chinook is. But if I have to say, like, my platoon loaded into a Huron, the response I usually get is, what's a Huron? That word of mouth is critical to the expansion of the user base of Arma, being able to easily explain, and for those who are hearing the game who are unfamiliar with it, to still get an idea of what's going on, to piece it together in their head. Having taken care of that as part of the game, I think really frees up the modding community, if you have a modern timeline, to be able to work on other aspects of the game too. I genuinely hope this is like a big side thing that's not necessarily a core component of the game. I would love to see a mod for just about every single modern nation. For the series that I do that look at potential conflicts around the world, it's tough to find different mods that represent some different nations. And so if we could free up time for the modding community to work on other things, that's going to be really, really cool. Now for number 2, voice commands. For the longest time, I have used a tool called Articulate. It's free, and basically what it allows you to do is to speak commands that the game will go ahead and give to the AI soldiers that you have. Now, in the heat of battle, or like when I'm flying, it makes this game so much easier. Instead of like trying to hit these certain keys and scroll the mouse, all I have to say into my headset is squad flank left, 2 move there. That type of stuff, or even like team red go prone. Now, since they are spoken, they are immediately executed, and this needs to be part of the game. Because one of the knocks on Arma from a lot of people is the incredibly steep learning curve on how to play it, knowing what commands do what commands even exist. It will be far more intuitive for somebody to know what they can say to do something than what buttons to go ahead and press. It also allows you to implement far more advanced features into the game that you can't intuitively do on a keyboard and a mouse. You can provide more features easier with voice commands is basically what I'm trying to say. And I do think that better control of the AI creates the opportunity to confront the enemy in more strategic ways, and in turn provides a better experience for the players of various missions. Now, this is another place where I'll step in and say a mod needs to be a core component of the game, but I think Task Force Radio is used by so many different people, and with Arma and its emphasis on realism, just having that in there, I think, does need to be a core part of Arma 4 in the use of multiplayer scenarios. Finally, coming in at number 1, and this should not be a surprise to any person at all, but Arma needs to have a better engine for Arma 4. Now, a lot of critics and detractors of Arma 3 really talked about issues with optimization that they had from the outset. And I will admit, I had some problems too. How many cores were being used, how that was distributed, or how everything was distributed between multiple cores, problems that I had with peripherals like joysticks and all of that. For Arma 4 to be successful, it has to be optimized to run with modern hardware and to make the game run more efficiently. If that stuff doesn't happen, as I mentioned, it's going to flop. Now, in conjunction with this, not only should this engine support the other 9 things that I've talked about here, but it needs to enable Arma 3 mods to easily integrate into the new engine. And I get it, there's some adjustments that are going to have to be made to every single mod, but I don't want a new engine to come at the expense of invalidating all the mods from Arma 3. There are some great mods that I am going to want to continue to play for years to come, including in Arma 4. Stuff like World War II mods, Vietnam era mods, different types of total conversion mods and stuff like that exist. This type of stuff is important and will determine the overall success of Arma for years to come. So to wrap things up, am I asking a lot with these 10 things? Absolutely I am. Am I going to see all of these things in Arma 4? Of course I'm not, but I do believe that even integrating some of these things can really enhance the next chapter of the Arma franchise. I do want to reiterate before I close this up that I love Arma. It is a phenomenal game. The modding community is great. There is no other game that's out there where I can play World War II genre, Vietnam genre, modern day future type of warfare in one game like this. It really is the best military sandbox game that's out there, and if you know your mods and how to integrate them, this is the most fun game you are ever going to play. So really, thank you, Bohemia Interactive, for making Arma 3, and I really hope that you see this as constructive feedback on how to make Arma 4 better. I am totally invested in the overall success of the Arma franchise, and that is why I'm doing this. If you think you've got constructive feedback too, make sure you comment below. Did I miss something that you guys would want to see in Arma 4? Or are my rankings incorrect? Should something that's lower end up being higher in my top 10 rankings? I want to know, and I know Bohemia Interactive wants to know as well. So, we'll wrap this up. Subscribe if you guys have not already. You can follow me on Twitter @_warishell and donate to my Patreon if you can. It helps the kids. No, seriously, I have kids, so it really will help the kids. But thanks again for watching Warfighters. War is hell, but you don't have to worry, because Warfighters, I've got your 6.